What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the show. Welcome to another episode of Action Movie Anatomy here on the Popcorn Talk Network. Today, we're going to be talking about Bad Boys 2, and we're going to be talking about the 2019 Oscar nominations in their entirety. Stick with us, guys. We'll see you in one quick second.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk, we talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Action Movie Anatomy.
Oh, look at that drop. I like this, man. DJ Ryan Nielsen in the booth. This video has a lot of views, the one that this cover is coming from. Still Dre that you guys are hearing.
You were saying this episode does already.
And the reality of it is, it deserves the views because it's an incredible cover of this song.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's amazing.
I love it.
The gentleman who did it, he should be very proud of himself.
We should know his name. I mean, we can't use Still Dre anymore, so we figured we'd use this sweet rendition. Yeah. And Ryan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are y'all? Congrats on the wins.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a big wow. I'm just watching us do our intro to the show here on screen.
So amazing.
We look awesome.
We do.
So it was a great weekend. We had a lot of fun. The Schmodown Awards, the Schmodown Draft, Oscar nominations hit this morning. The Morbius trailer hit this morning. A lot of things. Why are we talking about the Oscar nominations on an episode of Action Movie Anatomy, Andrew?
Well, because we've done this show for so long. We've done it for 5 years now.
No, that's the Five Horsemen.
Why would you do that? Why would you even mention that? We've done this show for so long now that we figured, there's a couple layers to this. One is that Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2 are not movies that Ben and I really love, but we know with the new Bad Boys coming out that we're going to see it. I'm actually going to go see it tomorrow night. We like Bad Boys enough, I guess, but we don't want to spend a whole hour talking about Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2. But
I think let me jump in on that point before you kind of continue the road, because I actually think we've covered a lot of movies on the show, as you mentioned, 250 episodes, or so, and in that time we've covered some movies we don't love.
Yep. We're
okay doing it. We've done it plenty of times. We always will find a silver lining in a movie, even if it's not our favorite movie. And there are plenty of moments in Bad Boys 2 that are super entertaining, and we're going to talk about those. Yeah. We're going to be having a whole episode talking about the Oscar noms and then Bad Boys 2. We're trying something brand new today. This is a format we're testing out. And the reason we're testing it out is because at a certain point, we want to continue doing a show here on Popcorn Talk, but we maybe want to have that show include things like movie news, to be a little more topical, to be covering things that are not just an hour about one movie every single week. And so we felt this was a good week, as good as any, to maybe try it out. The Oscar noms hit this morning. Most. And so we felt like we would give it a shot, and we would spend the first half of the show talking Oscar noms 2019, and the second half, we would do a slightly abbreviated version of Bad Boys 2. Now, if the episode finishes, you guys in the comments tell us here, you know what? I didn't really like this. I want you guys to stick to an hour on the movie. That's the show I love, and that's what I'm here to let us know, because we'd love to know. We'd love to know what you guys think. There are plenty of places for us to talk about other things. Also, Drew and I do streams now every single week on our own channel. We have a channel called Action Industries. We have one on Friday, we have one on Sunday. There's lots of time to talk about things. So at the end of this show, if we feel like we haven't given the credit due that Bad Boys 2 deserves, we'll talk about it a little bit on the streams. We'll make some jokes about it. We'll reference things that we loved. But we decided today we wanted to give it a shot. So thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Action Movie Anatomy. And
go ahead. Oh. I didn't want to interrupt you on your you're going. Keep going. I got nothing to say.
Nothing to say to me.
No, I mean, I was in the middle of saying, and then you went on a run, so keep going. Intro the show. Do the thing.
We're here for Action Movie Anatomy on the Popcorn Talk Network. We talk action movies on the show. Those movies adhere to 4 basic rules. We're going to get into all those rules of the show and the things that we do when we get to the Bad Boys 2 segment. But on the Popcorn Talk Network, where you guys are seeing this stream right now, we want you guys to get excited to hear about the Oscar noms, which we're going to talk about. Drew and I spent a chunk of time on the phone this morning talking about the Oscar noms already. It's a big announcement today. A lot of news. I think this is the first year you and I have been totally immersed as critics, as pundits, whatever you want to call us, content creators, where like most of the relevant movies that are being talked about, we either have seen or have had like many discussions about those movies.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've never really been the biggest fan of the Oscars. I've never been like a diehard fan of like watching them, even back home. But the more time that I spend in the space and talking about movies professionally, the more disconnected I feel from the Oscars, as weird as that sounds. Yes, I've seen all the movies, and I think that's most of the movies, and I think that's a lot different than the general populace that watches films. They've probably seen maybe half or less than half the movies that are nominated. But the more that you spend time in this space and around these people and around critics, people that are so outspoken about their opinions about movies, and also the people that are kind of paving the way for what seems, you can always tell when a movie comes out and the way that critics respond. You're like, all right, I'll probably hear about this movie in January. Come Oscar season, come award season, this will probably be one of those movies. The thing about it, though, is that people are never happy. They're never satisfied with the nominations.
Totally agree.
They always feel like there's a ton of snubs, and they always feel like there's a lot of movies in nominations that are kind of stuck in the old model of Hollywood, and I think that that's something that kind of happened again. That being said, I think that there's still a lot of really good movies that are nominated, and I think a lot of great performances that are nominated, so I think it'll be good for us to talk about it. I don't want it to be one of those things where we just get in here and we just shit on all the nominations and we talk about why movies should be nominated that aren't.
No.
I think snubs is something that you can pay some attention to, but for the most part, I want to talk about what did get nominated and what we think is going to win.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably the best place to start. So maybe we just jump straight into the first discussion this year. Actually, before we get into it, I think we should do a couple shout outs, right?
Yeah.
So if you guys are watching here on Popcorn Talk Network, we already mentioned Ryan Nelson. He's up in the booth. Ryan, how you doing?
Doing great. How are y'all?
Excellent. We want to hear you kind of chime in here while we're talking about things as well. We know you have strong opinions about it, but
For sure, and I have all the noms all queued up. So
perfect.
when you're ready.
Be sure to hit that subscribe button, guys, for Popcorn Talk Network. We already mentioned Action Industries. Go check that out. You can find us on social media. You can find @Andrew Guy, Ben Bateman Media. Team Action Show is our Twitter account, and everywhere else we're Action Industries, so go check that out. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/Team Action. We're going to do some shout outs to some patrons there a little later in the show.
Yeah, well, we got new patrons, Douglas, Johnson, and Brooks McKenzie. Big shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for your patronage, and we'll get to the generals at the end of the show, after we finish covering Bad Boys. But let's get into the nominations here.
Yeah, I think the thing to start with here, and we mentioned this a little this morning. So back in 2009, as a direct response to The Dark Knight hitting and not receiving a Best Picture nomination, the Academy made a change. And this is not crazy. We've seen a lot of this in the last few years. The Academy likes to kind of update their rules. Some things stick around. Some things like the popular movie category last year didn't even make it to the actual Oscar ceremony.
Yeah.
They changed it so that we could have more movies get nominated. And those first couple years, you had 10 nominations each, 2009, 2010. After that, they changed the system. I don't know the exact rules, but from what I can understand, this has been running on Twitter, people were saying there's a math system. Basically, a movie has to receive a certain number of votes to actually qualify as a Best Picture nomination, which is why, and I didn't know this, so maybe this is news to you guys too, you'll often see the years there'll be 8 nominees or 9 nominees, as opposed to 10, because in my opinion, there's always at least 10 great movies a year.
Yes.
Right? So that's why this year, for instance, there are 9 nominations, and there are a couple snubs that we'll get to. But there were 9 films nominated. The 9 films nominated for Best Picture are Parasite, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Marriage Story, Little Women, Joker, Jojo Rabbit, The Irishman, and Ford v. Ferrari. This is pretty chalk, I would say, for what you and I expected.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely bummed that Knives Out's not up there. That's my movie of the year. That's still my number 1 movie of the year, but it makes sense that it's not. I'm okay with all these movies, being nominated other than The Irishman. The Irishman is my big blemish on the whole nominations.
Even though we both knew it was going to happen, it just
we knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's on par with any of these movies. It doesn't feel like it tried as hard. Now I know that there's people that love The Irishman, and I honestly think that if The Irishman was just a movie that came and it was like, oh yeah, this is a good movie, I enjoyed it, I'm glad these guys did it, I'm glad that we have this,
right,
I would probably like it a lot more. But the way that people talk about it in saying that it's like, oh my God, they're back together again, and like you're never gonna see a movie like this, and Pesci's the greatest performance we've ever seen in film in 2019, and like, yeah, Pesci's great in it, and De Niro's fine, and Pacino's fine, but overall the movie just felt like I was just very lukewarm about the whole thing. It doesn't feel like a Best Picture nominee in 2019. It feels like a Best Picture nominee in like 2000.
Yeah, it also it's weird because looking at the chat here, Jonas Tiger, longtime listener to the show, says blemish. What the fuck? Oh, sorry, I swore. It says WTF. And I think the question that's on me. I think what he means, because you and I saw the film together.
Yeah,
it's not that either of us, I think, actively thought The Irishman was a bad movie. That's not the point. The point is that The Irishman represented, I think, an idea of a movie that at one time would have been done so differently than this movie, but there was so much freedom because it's Netflix and they want to purchase this movie. They want it done the way they want it done. Scorsese has so much cred. You got all these guys together. So many of the other pundits that we talked about when the movie came out were like, oh, I mean, what am I going to really complain about the length? It's the last time I'm really going to ever get to see these guys probably work with Scorsese in a gangster movie. I want every minute of it I can get. And
but that's like not a good movie.
Right.
That's just like stroking the ego and playing to this, catering to this specific audience. But yeah, that movie's way too long.
There's a lot in that movie we both really liked. There's a ton of stuff in that movie we really liked. It's just that, on the whole, it feels a little long. I knew it was going to get nominated. The only thing up here that I think was the big surprise to everyone involved, a huge surprise really, was the Parasite did actually get a Best Picture nomination. I think people suspected it. A lot of people wanted it. It was the most probably well-reviewed film of the year. But in years past, even, as they call it, an international film would not have received a Best Picture nomination. So I think that's the big surprise. For me, the one thing, and it's not because I think it's a movie that's on par in quality with these movies that misses, is I kind of can't believe that they didn't give Avengers Endgame a Best Picture nomination to represent $22 billion, 11 years, and the entirety of this genre and approach to filmmaking that absolutely changed Hollywood.
So you're saying that you feel like it should get the Return of the King treatment?
Absolutely. I mean, Return of the King obviously is a great movie.
Yeah.
Right? But Return of the King is also bloated at times. Return of the King is long. And Return of the King also really received the Best Picture nomination and win there because it represented 3 movies worth of incredible work. You look at Avatar in 2009. Avatar received 9 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, for a movie that, frankly, as you can watch on our review of that movie on this show, is not that good. It's a pretty forgettable movie. It's just that it was impactful. It became the highest grossing film of all time. Avengers Endgame is now the highest grossing film of all time. It is an unprecedented thing that they did with the MCU. It's crazy to me that they would reward Avatar, they would reward Return of the King, they would reward Black Panther in the context of, obviously there are different preferences in that movie that make it relevant and amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, Black Panther's a great movie, but still, like, if Black Panther gets a nomination for Best Picture, and you're gonna say that it's a really good movie, but it also does all these other things, and that's why it's being honored, I don't understand how you can't make the same argument for Avengers Endgame when there's a freaking 10th spot open. Why is math dictating that Endgame is not being honored for $22 billion worth of movies?
Yeah, it's tough because I definitely understand what you're saying in this, and I don't actually disagree with you. I do think that Endgame should have gotten more than 1 nomination. It gets 1 nomination in Best Visual Effects, and will it win it? Probably. Yeah. But at the same time, it could lose it. It could lose it to 1917, the same category, you know, a movie that kills it visually. I don't care about the money.
Yeah,
I really don't.
Fair.
Like, the $22 billion doesn't matter to me at all. But what does matter to me is like how relevant it was, how big the whole Marvel universe was, and that this is the true end of the phase that we've all kind of known to love. All these actors, the stories that they've told, and really the next phase of Marvel is going to feel like a completely different book.
It's unlikely that it'll be as successful. It'll still make a lot of money, but it's not going to feel special or meaningful, I think, in the same way.
My question, though, is, it's not going to win.
Right.
So do you just want the nomination so that you can see it with, like, 10 years down the road, nominated for Best Picture, Endgame,
basically,
just like a little bit of respect.
Yeah, and it's not like it happens every time. I wanted to check my math when I was talking about it this morning. I looked at Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, did not receive a Best Picture nomination. 8 movies, tons of money, really impactful, people loved them, didn't get one. You could make the same argument for Rise of Skywalker if you wanted, I guess. It's the last in the trilogy. But, like, there was just something about Endgame and the impact that it had and how much hype there was built into this whole thing in a very unique and special sort of new way. I don't know. That was the other thing I was saying is that I don't like the mathematics rule that the 10th movie doesn't get nominated if there's not enough nominations. Because, like, a couple movies, Booksmart, Late Night, The Report, Bombshell, The Mustang, Peanut Butter Falcon. These are all movies that I loved this year. I thought these movies were fantastic. Some of these movies are honored, Knives Out, in other categories. It's bizarre to me that you would allow 10 nominations in this day and age, but nobody really understands or even notices the difference between a year that has 8 and a year that has 10. When I had to look it up to even realize that since 2009, 2010, there's only been those 2 years with 10.
Right. And it's like no one knows, like, there's a handful of the 1% that actually knows the reasoning and how it works out and the votes. I didn't know that. You didn't know that till this morning. So I think that's really interesting. My actual favorite of the year that's on this list is Parasite.
Yeah.
Hands down, without a doubt. I mean, Knives Out is my favorite of the year, and I'm bummed it's not on the list. I'm glad that it at least got screenplay. I think that's great.
Because the Globes ignored that one, right? They didn't give it a screenplay nom. I think you and I talked about that.
They did not. I loved Parasite, though, and I've seen all the movies on this list except for 2. I have not seen Jojo Rabbit, and I haven't seen Little Women. But everything else on there I've seen. I've heard that Little Women is great.
It's really good.
But I loved Parasite. I thought it was incredibly unique. It's a great story. It does so much. I was saying how Marriage Story, you know, it's a very straightforward movie in the sense of it tells the story of a divorce and kind of like not really so much about the couples falling out, but more about the process of getting a divorce legally and all that stuff. I was saying to you earlier on the phone, and I kind of had trouble articulating it. And I think I probably still will when I say it right now, but like it feels like when you watch Parasite and when you watch Marriage Story, it just feels of a different class.
Okay.
Marriage Story for me feels like a student film. Like a student could have made that movie, in my opinion. That's how I feel.
They wouldn't have gotten the actors they got.
Yeah, right. It wouldn't have got the actors, but let's say they get incredible actors that do an incredible job, and they get the great performance, they get the locations, and you know they get someone like Laura Dern to come in and just knock out this character.
Yeah.
Because you've seen that before in like, you know, first directing or directors, their very first movie. Sometimes, I mean, Paul Thomas Anderson's a great example. It's like you look at his very first movie, you're like, how the hell did you get these people in this movie? I can see that with a movie like Marriage Story, whereas Parasite feels like to me, if we're talking student filmmaking in Marriage Story, and again, I liked Marriage Story.
Yeah.
Parasite to me feels like NBA against high school.
It feels like
a completely different just genre, a completely different stratosphere of filmmaking.
So just you said there's 2 movies on this that you haven't seen. There's also 2 I haven't seen.
Yeah.
I've not yet seen Marriage Story or Parasite. So I've seen the other 7. We on our show, and we'll talk about this a little later in the show, but Andrew and I are launching a brand new show. It's going to be officially launching this Sunday night. It's called The Action Guys. It's the name that we previously did with Collider. That show is now going to live on the Action Industry's YouTube, and we're starting out the show this Sunday night. We'll talk a little more about it later on, but the subject on this Sunday night show is going to be the best films of 2019. Each of us will be unveiling, I think, at least our top 5, maybe our top 10 each. So by then, I will have seen Parasite and Marriage Story. You will have seen Jojo Rabbit, and you will have seen the other one you missed, Little Women.
Little Women, ideally. Yeah.
Ideally. So those are, I think because we have limited time, I think let's keep jumping around a little bit.
Well, the one other thing I want to mention is because so many people have talked about it here in the chat, and I want to say this thing about it now, and we'll move on. A lot of people are saying Farewell. The Farewell is the other biggest snub out there. And it's interesting because I watched The Farewell with my family that is run by a matriarch that is very Asian, and she's first generation. I mean, she would prefer to not even be in America. I feel like she would still love to live in Korea. Like the matriarch of this family, she's honestly, in my opinion, she's the only one that deserves an Oscar nomination. But the movie itself, a lot of people are saying it got snubbed. And I was trying to talk to my girlfriend to try to communicate just exactly how I want to say what I feel about this movie. I thought this movie was fine. I thought it was a 7, like just great. Like out of 10, I'm going to 7. I watched it with my girlfriend, who is a second generation Chinese American. Her family still, does a lot of the traditions that you'll see in the movie. I watched it with my family, again, with my mother there. And my mother had health issues when I was in high school. There was a lot of things about this movie that really, really spoke to me. And I found myself laughing at a lot of moments that I feel like people wouldn't understand if they weren't raised by an Asian American family. That being said, I don't think that movie was that great. Like, it was fine. I think it was a little drawn out. I think that some of the shots they kept repeating over and over of like people walking was a little weird. It's a very specific story, and if it's not your personal story, I think it might be hard for people to relate to. But what I think is interesting is the amount of people that are in uproar about it not getting nominated. Yeah, because the exciting thing about that is it shows there's a lot of Asian Americans and a lot of people that care about the Asian American story that are watching this movie and going, holy shit, finally someone's telling my story. Kind of like with Crazy Rich Asians. Yeah. You watch that movie, and as an Asian American, you're like, oh man, there's stuff in there that people wouldn't even understand. Like when you're a kid watching a movie with adult humor, it's the same as watching these movies that really focused on being raised by an Asian family. And you watch shit and you just laugh because you're like, of course he's just like, the dad hasn't said anything for 30 minutes. He's just being fed by the mom because that's what happens. And like things like that. That being said, the movie was fine. I honestly think it was kind of forgettable. And I think the only performance that stood out in the whole thing was the grandmother, who was actually sick.
Yeah, it is. It's funny what you just said about that. You see it year after year, kind of, and in different movies where, for instance, Big Fat Greek Wedding is a great example of a movie where, that movie, so many people responded to that movie when it came out because of the way it made them feel about their family, their culture. They could relate to a lot of the sort of family dynamics in that movie. It's not that movie was so great. It's that it spoke to people, it affected people.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So Crazy Rich has a similar kind of appeal. And I think That's a totally reasonable. It's a totally reasonable feeling and reason to like something, but it's not a reasonable feeling or reason to be up in arms about it not being acknowledged by an award ceremony, because it's like that's a personal feeling, a personal connection you have to a movie. And I think it's the case for everything. But when you're looking at a film, you're trying to say, is this a masterful piece of work? Did this require something amazing? You know, Boyhood is a great example of a movie where that movie's pretty good. I like Boyhood a lot. The concept behind Boyhood and the execution is what is so amazing.
Yeah,
about it.
that's what, and
It deserves to be nominated for that reason.
That being said, I like The Farewell, but I'm totally okay with it not being nominated. So let's move on to our next. We got Best Director.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one. I think one thing I wanted to really point out to people is that a lot of people now, we live in this world of the Oscars where, because there are 5 nominations in the other categories and there's more than 5 in Best Picture, people have a feeling where they get kind of up in arms about the other categories. And it's because we have an outrage culture that goes along with the Best Picture noms now.
Yeah.
And it's a little easier with the Best Pictures to get more pissed off, because when you have 8 or 9 or 10 movies, that's a lot of options. You can reward. It didn't used to be like that. When you look at Best Director, very often the 5 best movies will have the 5 directors of those movies be nominated.
Right.
It's really hard to go past that because you don't have more than 5. So if you look at this, Joker led with the most nominations, right? It's a comic book movie. It's a big deal. It's a really great movie. I think Joker is divisive but great.
Yeah, and I think to not give credit to Todd Phillips for what we see in that movie is just kind of asinine.
Would be crazy, because
Yeah.
he did something unique. And I think 1917, if you've seen the film, it's my #1 of the year. That would, if he hadn't gotten nominated for Best Director for that movie, I don't know what we're talking about, because that's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah. I feel very similarly about Parasite.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like when you watch that movie, and it sounds like some people in the chat agree, it's like it's masterclass filmmaking. The other 2 on the list, now, we love these guys. We're big fans of Scorsese and
Gigantic
Tarantino.
Scorsese and
How
Tarantino,
can you not be? But neither of these movies are the best that either of them have done. They're not even, I don't think, in the top 3 of either of their films.
No, I think
Filmographies, excuse me.
definitely for Scorsese, it's not.
100% for Scorsese.
Scorsese, Irishman might be top 10. Maybe it's like his 9th best movie.
And then if you're talking about, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you're talking about the same guy that did Kill Bill and Inglourious and Pulp Fiction. And like, you go back and you watch those movies. When I watched those movies,
Reservoir Dogs.
What?
Reservoir
Dogs. I mean, when I watched the first 5 minutes of Inglourious Bastards, I would take that 5-minute scene over all of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, and so I've it's probably the movie on this list that I'm the most interested to rewatch.
Yeah.
Because I feel like our expectation for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and what we got, because obviously we didn't know the twist. Now that you know the twist is coming, I almost wonder if the ability to enjoy that movie differently I wonder if it feels totally different. I kind of said the same thing about The Irishman. Like, I feel like that movie, when it's on Netflix and I rewatch it in a few years, I probably will enjoy the crap out of that movie.
Yeah.
But I think in both cases, they're very long. There's a lot of expectation that goes with those 2 movies. So my feeling, though, is not about those movies as much as it is the systemic problem
Yes.
of female directors and directors of color, basically just people that aren't white men, being snubbed at these award ceremonies.
The big thing this year, now, when we do get to directors, since we are talking about directors, the thing that is great about this that Jeff Graham pointed out to us, our friend, he's like, you look at all the people that have won and been nominated for Best Director over the last decade, and it's a great, great thing.
Yeah.
It really is. They're almost 99% international directors, which is amazing. It's about the women.
Yeah.
It really is. And like, if you're going to hear me talk about The Farewell, and I don't think that she should have been nominated for director, and I don't think Awkwafina should have been nominated for actress, but Greta Gerwig not getting nominated for Little Women here is offensive.
Well, it's astounding because
It's offensive.
because if you think about it, like we've talked about this before, right? When you see a movie pop up on a nominations list, right?
Yeah.
And that movie gets nominated for, let's say, picture, 2 acting nominations, and like screenplay. Like one of those movies, like the old 4 nom set. You're like, okay, basically what happened here is it's driven by 2 great performances. Everybody loves the movie because these 2 people stood out. And the rest of the movie is pretty good, but it's about the 2 performances. We all know what that's like. And if you don't get a director nomination on a movie like that, that's fine, because there's only 5 slots.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about a movie like Little Women, that's right at the top of the number of nominations. I mean, it's tied. I think it's like, I don't have it right.
It's like 9 or something. I think
Something
you're
like
telling
that.
me.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's really close to the top. Almost everything about that movie is being honored except for Greta Gerwig. And Greta Gerwig wrote the movie, directed the movie. You're telling me that costume design, you're telling me that art direction, you're telling me writing, all the other things that go along with making this movie great. But the one person who is responsible for the most things in this movie is not going to be nominated for
the person leading your actors and actresses, the person that adapted the screenplay of the story that's up for Best Picture, like all of these things. Like, fine if she doesn't win, I guess. Like, fine, but at least put her goddamn name up there. Like, at least do that.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's like insane to me because again, like I really liked Lady Bird, really liked Lady Bird. I think that movie stuck with me. It made me feel a lot. This is no Lady Bird. This is like a Titanic achievement. This movie, like I did not expect I was going to enjoy Little Women even close to the amount that I did. The performances are fantastic. The composition of the movie is great. It's so enjoyable.
I have heard nothing but great things from about Little Women from all different demographics of critics.
Yeah.
That being said, since we are already over halfway through the show, I think that this is Mendez's category to lose.
Yeah.
I think it's between him and Todd Phillips personally, even though it's probably much closer to between Mendez, Tarantino, and Scorsese.
Oh, bong.
Yeah. Well,
sorry to interrupt.
So here's the thing: is
that a Jay and Silent Bob thing?
I was like, yes, I will smoke with you later, Ryan.
Yes.
No, I love him, and I want him to win. I honestly want Parasite to win Best Picture, Best Director. I want it to get nominated for the performances. Like the performance of the wife in that movie is incredible. Problem is none of it's gonna happen, and like that's just the world that we live in. Like if we're living in a world where Greta Gerwig is not even getting nominated for director,
yeah.
Bong Joon-ho is never gonna win in that world. He's gonna get nominated so that I think people go, we care. Look, the Academy cares about international films and films with subtitles, but yeah, I don't know.
I also think the way people were talking about Parasite this year. I mean, many people that I know, many of the critics that we know, and even just like the film fans, like take like Paul Oyama, who's somebody that we play against in the Movie Trivia Schmodown. He watches more movies than anyone I know. He watched 740 movies last year. He loves independent film. I mean, he is. I remember he saw this movie, and I think I saw him on Facebook say, Parasite's not only the best movie of the year, but it's one of the greatest films I've ever seen. Yeah. I mean, like,
it's incredible. It sticks with you, too. You keep thinking about it. And it's not because it's, like, so demented or so, like, jarring. It sticks with you.
Yeah, so I think probably for me, and I tweeted this morning about it. You guys can go check that out. But my like, bold prediction, my hot take on this category is that Tarantino's going to win it. I think they're going to give it to him as it's almost going to be like a legacy award.
I really will be bothered if he does. I truly think I want Bong to win, but I think Sam Mendes should. Let's get on to, let's kind of cruise through, let's just go through the next four, actresses and actors. So Best Actor, we got Antonio Banderas for Pain and Glory, Leonardo DiCaprio for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Adam Driver for Marriage Story, Joaquin Phoenix as Arthur Fleck in Joker, and of course Jonathan Pryce or what's his name? Elliot Cava as Cardinal George Mario. I know that's not how you say it.
George Mario,
probably like Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Borgoglio.
You want to try that again?
Bergoglio. So this is a category where I'm a bit kind of hamstrung because I've only seen 3 of the 5, and I know that Jonathan Pryce and Antonio's performances are supposed to be incredible. Especially, I've heard more about Antonio Banderas and this performance than I have heard about him since Puss in Boots.
It's fair. It's a fair point.
Like legitimately.
I am Puss.
I am Puss in Boots.
We're gonna do the Mask.
We're gonna
of
do
Zorro.
Shrek.
We're gonna do Mask of Zorro on the show eventually.
Oh, we have to.
And
you
your
know how I
mother
feel
will
about
be the
that
guest.
April 5th, my birthday's coming up, and she's gonna be in town.
We should,
just do it while she's here.
We should do. Well, I think I don't know if your mother would want to be on camera for an entire episode talking. I think you'd have to run that past her.
Yeah.
But I do know that when I did best comic book movies of all time on Bibiani's podcast, I know that he had said this is like Mask of Zorro might be like his favorite movie. It's like top 2 or something.
So good.
I remember like I was so shocked. I was like, you and Andrew Guy just became best friends. Like there's like, so maybe that's what we got to do. But
no one loves that movie as much as me.
Yeah, but so actor and actress, I think it does seem like it's Joaquin's award to lose.
Yeah.
I would be disappointed honestly if anybody won over him. He's so affecting in that role. As far as actress goes, I think. So the
actresses are Cynthia Erivo as Harriet and Harriet Tubman, Scarlett Johansson in Marriage Story, Saoirse Ronan in Little Women, Charlize Theron in Bombshell, and Renee Zellweger as Judy in Judy Garland.
Classic Los Angeles, LA industry prediction here would be that it's Judy and it's Renee Zellweger. That's a classic pick, and she's great. She's fantastic. I don't think anyone saw the movie, but she's great. Like that's, and it happens. You do see it happen a lot where like there's the biopic and it's the win. But my hot take here is that that it's going to be ScarJo in Marriage Story.
Yeah, I think that you might be right. I don't think she deserves it. I think that she's great in Marriage Story. But I personally think that maybe it's Renee Zellweger's Judy, just because I remember you telling me when you walked out of that movie, you were just like, God damn, she was incredible.
She was great.
Absolutely incredible. I've heard Scott Mantz talk about it. I've heard a good amount of people talk about it. But that's how I feel. As for Best Actor, I think it needs to be Joaquin. Yeah. It really does. If it's anyone else, it feels like it'll be a travesty.
Agreed. In terms of supporting, you've got Tom Hanks for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood as Fred Rogers, Anthony Hopkins in The Two Popes, Al Pacino in The Irishman as Jimmy Hoffa, Joe Pesci in The Irishman as Russell Bufalino, and Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as Cliff Booth. So there's actually roles in here. I love Joe Pesci in The Irishman.
I do too.
Big fan of him. Yeah. I think he crushed in that movie. I think the reality of this is, if you've ever talked about a Lifetime Achievement Award or this is just like your award, it's just going to be Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It has to do with 20 factors. It has to do with, like, so rarely have we ever seen a movie star get to just basically be a movie star in a movie and be rewarded for it. Mm-hmm. It's like such a unique position he's in. There's so few people I can think of that would have been able to just like
do what he did.
Be basically.
Yeah. And it's funny because he's not actually the movie star in the movie.
No.
You're talking about Brad Pitt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know in this one. It's weird because I haven't seen The Two Popes, but honestly, when I look at this list, I just want Hopkins to win.
You just love Hopkins.
I just love Hopkins, and I look at all these other performances, and I don't think any of them deserved it. But I haven't seen Hanks as Rogers. Yeah, now that's the one thing that could be absolutely incredible. But I don't think Pacino deserved it as Hoffa, and Pesci's. He's so much better in Goodfellas,
yeah,
you know, and it's like such a different.
We both walked out of The Irishman, and we're both.
Pesci was great.
He was the best part.
He's by far and away the best part. I have a problem with Brad Pitt winning.
I know you do.
I really do.
I love him in that movie. I don't think it's
like. I don't know why it bothers me so much.
I think it's for me like the reason I like it and the reason I'm okay with it is like it does feel like there's different types of acting, right? That I like to reward in movies. Like you talk about the difference between Tom Cruise and Jerry Maguire and Tom Cruise and Magnolia, and it's like. Okay, and Jerry, he's just basically being Tom Cruise. He's being he's as cruisy as he's being, but it's really heartfelt and he's great at it. It's like one of my all-time favorite roles. You talk about him in Magnolia, and he is working that role. I mean, he's giving it everything he's got. Totally different, and I would reward them both differently. For Brad Pitt, it's like we've seen him go crazy in 12 Monkeys. We've seen him do other things. We've seen him into the crazy de-aging and all that in Benjamin Button. But at the end of the day, it's like I like Brad Pitt in Moneyball more. I think he's way more impressive in that movie. But here he's like so iconic and memorable from the first 5 minutes you even see him in the movie.
See, but I don't actually think he's iconic or memorable. I just think he's cool. Like I remember him being cool, but I don't actually remember him do it. Like I don't remember what he did for me to think he was cool, other than just be Brad Pitt.
He like definitely got. After the movie, I remember thinking like he definitely got the best role. He got the easiest role to be awesome in. I love Leo in that movie, but I just don't.
I think I like Leo more almost.
Like
that
one scene.
That one scene's so good. That one scene could win me over forever. So the last category here. Well, in that category, I don't really know who takes it from me. I guess I'd be happy with Pesci or Hopkins. Best Supporting Actress. This is where I really don't know because I haven't seen any of these movies except for Marriage Story, where Laura Dern was amazing. She really was amazing.
Yeah, the only one I haven't seen here is Marriage Story. And for me, there actually are great performances here. Florence Pugh would be a little too early in her career to get this win. Margot Robbie is fantastic in Bombshell. She is really, really good, but it does feel like that movie is more of Charlize's movie. It seems like
everyone talks about Kathy Bates.
She's good in Richard Jewell. I mean, she's really good.
Okay.
She's not like...
Is she his mom?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's great. I mean, she is great. And so ScarJo is fantastic in JoJo, but it just is Laura Dern in Marriage Story.
I was going to say, so it sounds like it's just her.
It's the one I haven't seen, but from what I understand, from what I hear from everyone about that, is it's just clear that she's going to win this award.
When you watch that first scene with Laura Dern, and the first scene with Laura Dern in Marriage Story is basically when Scarlett Johansson comes in and just consults with her. She's an attorney. In that scene, you're like, by the end of it, you're like, I'm going to leave my husband and I'm going to take him for everything he's worth because she is so good and she is so I mean, like ScarJo is literally just a puppet. She's so nice and inviting, and she like, you know, gives her something to drink, and she's like, well, tell me your story. And then you can just see like the hooks sink in, the claws sink in, and you're like, wow, Scarlett Johansson is going on Laura Dern's ride for the rest of this movie.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. So
I'm excited to watch it. So I think, guys, because we do want to make sure we have time to talk about Mike Lowrey. We want to talk about Bad Boys 2 here. And we're going to do kind of an abbreviated version of Action Movie Anatomy today.
Yeah,
We've done it in the past on our own channel when we used to do those 10-minute AMAs for the Patreon. And I think we'll probably do kind of a similar version of the show today. But we did want to make sure that we got to talk about the Oscars today for you guys. So if you do want to hear a little more Oscars talk, a little bit more of best movies of the year, be sure to go subscribe to Action Industries, which is our YouTube channel. We're launching a brand new show called The Action Guys. It's a 2-hour live streaming show. We're going to be doing a main topic of best movies of 2019.
Yes.
Some Schmodown Corner. We'll have a guest. It's going to be super awesome. Live chat, call-ins every single Sunday, and I believe it's going to be at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So get excited, get hyped, go subscribe right now, and stay tuned if you want to hear us talk about Bad Boys 2.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I'm really excited to drop the show this Sunday. Our live streams have been crazy lately. We've
been
had
awesome.
over 350 people in the last couple, over 200 the ones before that. It's been insane. So if you guys are looking to do some live stream action Fridays and Sundays around 5:30, 6:30.
Yes, sir.
So let's get into our thesis statement about Bad Boys.
I think we'll let's kind of
Yeah?
intro the show
Okay, all right,
because
we'll
we
intro.
haven't gotten
We'll
to
do
do
it.
all
We'll
the
do
things
the
we do.
thing.
If
Yeah.
you've been watching this for Oscars, you don't know the show we're about to do. This is called Action Movie Anatomy. We talk action movies on this show. The movies we talk about on the show here are 4 basic rules. Rule number 1: the don't have the outline in front of me.
Rule number 1: the hero always plays by their own rules. I guess definitely. They have to.
It's a duo of heroes.
It's a duo of
but they
heroes,
definitely
yes.
do, yeah.
Rule number 2: the hero and the villain are always the smartest beings, creatures, aliens, what
People,
have you, in the
dinosaurs,
room.
what have you.
It's tough with movies like this because you don't really ever want to give enough credit to the villain feeling like he's the smartest person in the room.
No.
This guy's just a crazy cokehead Colombian or a Cuban,
Yeah.
you know, just like guy that lives with his mom and cuts people up.
Michael Bay creation.
Yeah, he's a Michael Bay created villain.
Rule number 3: the movie is driven by a police, military, political, or mercenary figure. They're cops. And rule number 4: the movie contains a minimum of 1 explosion. It's a Michael Bay movie,
Michael
of
Bay
course.
movie.
There are going to be explosions. What I want to do, because the way we do this show is we,
I don't have a thesis, so I want to skip it. No?
we have a couple segments we do on the show. One of the main segments we always do on the show is we start with thesis statements. So it's your biggest, boldest thought about the film. It is, if this movie comes up at a party and you want to say, hey, here's my hot take about this movie. Here's the thing you need to remember. The greatest, the first, the only, the last. This is what you say. And I know you have a good one. I actually liked yours a lot, so I'm gonna cue you to go first here.
Okay, so if it's the one that I'm thinking of, I don't think Michael Bay will ever make a great movie. Ever. Now, I love The Rock. The Rock is an amazing film. It's probably my favorite action movie from the 90s.
Yeah.
But is it a great movie? Yeah, to action movie fans, but not to like something like the Academy or to like, you know, pretty highbrow critics won't look at The Rock and be like, well, it's great. I mean, they'll probably say Ed Harris is enjoyable in it, and you know, Connery has his moments and there's some fun action, but it's not a good movie.
It's what it is that it's driven. We talk about a category on the show all the time called ridiculously legitimate. At the end of the show, we dignify the category as, you know, it's a movie that's awesome. It's a little ridiculous, but it's grounded by one really great thing. What The Rock has going for it is that if Ed Harris had turned in that performance in almost any other serious movie, he legit, if it was like a war drama,
If it's like a war drama, he might win.
he might have gotten a nomination at the Oscars for it because he's so fantastic in that role. I love him in that movie. But that's the reason that movie is great. And I agree with you. You know, I'll jump in and say next that, and this is a really weird realization because I do have to say, in 2015, when you and I started Action Movie Anatomy, I would never have been able to, with a straight face, say what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
And it's that I find Michael Bay's filmmaking totally offensive.
You and I both had the same moment where we were watching this movie and we're like, I feel dumb, and I feel like us as an audience in the 90s were kind of
Idiots.
immature or idiots, dumb, yeah, whatever you want to call it.
And I thought about this a lot, and it's not that in 2015 I couldn't have acknowledged that his treatment of, like, say, there are racist undertones with the way that he treats characters
in
and race
all of
characters.
his movies.
It's not that I couldn't have acknowledged that in 2015. That's totally real. I think what it is that at that time, if you had said that to me, I would have been like, yeah, this is true, but like these are big stupid action movies. Know your audience, know what you're signing up for. If you want to watch this movie, like you're signing up for like really stupid one-liners and big explosions and all the things that Hot Fuzz references is awesome. But despite the fact that we've done a freaking show called Action Movie Anatomy for 5 years, we've talked about every bad action movie under the sun that we think is good. I watched this movie and I was like, I feel dumber. I feel I'm having a hard time enjoying this because like early on in the movie, you know, the two girls that are with the drug lord, they like shoot the gun and he's like, stupid bitches. He's like, bitches. And I was like, wow, that's the one-liner. That's what you wrote in the script.
We need to do a whole setup here.
So you can say bitches.
And then we'll cut. All right, moving on.
I was like, this guy's supposed to be menacing. He's supposed to be menacing and evil. And like, that's the best you could come up with.
And the whole treatment of the bad guy and like how evil he was and how like nice he was to his grandma or like the guy that like something about his mom he grew up with. He like laughed at his daughter being chubby.
Yeah,
that was the other thing is like you're gonna like make fat jokes about a
young
little girl.
It was just like
you know.
So okay, but so here's the thing, and this is where I think we will end that part of the conversation
we will.
Now, because I think our thesis statements are making clear what we understand about this movie. There's a lot about this movie when I was watching it where I was like, this is special and unique in its own way.
It is, because there were definitely moments where I would laugh out loud and be like, God, this is so stupidly fun.
So the next segment on the show we do is called Fist Bump.
Yeah.
Moment. And if there's ever a movie that's had a fist bump moment, I mean, it's something happens in a movie, you look around, you're like, are you seeing this right now? This is ridiculous. I get to watch the rest of this movie. This is probably a movie that has more fist bump moments for more people than most movies will ever have.
Well, that's the thing about Michael Bay is he based his career off of fist pumps. He's like, let's just do 50 fist pumps. It'll take about 2 hours. We'll call it a day. Mine in this movie is actually interesting because it's not any of the things you'd think it would be. It's not the action. It's not like many of the one-liners that go back and forth between each other, like when someone gets headshot. It's literally just the date scene. Yeah. It's 100% every single time that this date scene happens. I always forget that it's about to happen because I don't watch this movie enough. Yeah. And I don't like it enough to remember it very, very well. But every time that doorbell rings and you open it up and the kid's standing there, I die. And I'm like, oh my God, everyone shut up, shut up.
Yeah. What the fuck are you?
And it's like that's how it starts. Also, like 5'4" Martin Lawrence being intimidating is one of my favorite things.
And like
ever.
Will Smith holding the bottle of champagne with the gun.
Like, it's so amazing. 30.
This is mine. You fight? You can fight.
You fight.
Motherfucker, you can't fight.
You at least 30. I love that they call him 30 twice. And the whole scene about it, it kills me. It's hilarious. And also, it's one of the things where when you pull back the camera lens and you think about what's happening and it's like Michael Bay is actually saying there being like, no, you say this.
Yeah.
And then Will, you say this.
You say
and
this.
then it'll be so funny, Martin, if you did this. So that part I kind of hate when I think about it. But if I think about just Will Smith and Martin Lawrence doing that scene and like them like talking to each other beforehand, like, oh yeah, and then you could say this and I could say this or we could improvise this.
Right.
It just gets me going. I love it.
And
it makes me so happy.
It'll be fascinating to see what actually happens with Bad Boys for Life. Like,
yeah.
Because this is 15 years ago. So like there was still an element of like, all right, this is kind of what audiences want. And I do want to point out, just so everybody understands, like I was thinking about what movies are being made today that basically mirror this, that audiences are okay with. And Hobbs and Shaw is not that different. It's a little different. But it's Cliff Curtis and Hobbs and Shaw is equally offensive in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a lot of this makes me laugh thinking about it. There's a lot of things in Hobbs and Shaw that feel a lot like watching Bad Boys 2. However, I will say that like it being these two characters doing this thing that came about in 1995 and they're going to do it again in 2019. Okay.
And like, yeah,
it's okay.
Exactly. Okay, and here we go. So Jonathan Peck says in the chat, fun fact, this scene was improvised. Richard Jarvie confirms it. That's why it's the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
It's because Michael Bay had absolutely no hand in the writing of it. And then Will Smith and Martin Lawrence are like, let's just get ghetto as fuck right now.
They're like, we're funny because we're comedians.
Because we're comedians. We've done that for a long time. Now let's think about the times that we went to girls' houses growing up in the worst situation that could have happened.
I totally agree. And I totally agree. And so actually so I'm going to jump in with my fist bump moment because I love that scene.
Yeah.
But my fist bump moment in this movie is It's the realization at the beginning when they throw off the Klan outfits and they've got the double guns. So it's the wraparound 360, which is a shot that we've talked about many times.
Very notorious.
It's a classic Michael Bay shot. It's the double gun 360. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, this is peak Will Smith. I was like, I didn't even really realize it until we watched it. I was like, this is, and I called you about this earlier because I was thinking about it. Like, so when you see an actor or an actress come out and they have their moment, it's more prominent with actors because, unfortunately, based on like sort of like the Hollywood system, famous actors, movie star actors will have longer careers than actresses. That we all sort of know there's like the horrible thing that happens when actresses that are stars start to hit their 40s, the roles change. It doesn't really happen for dudes till they're like their mid to late 50s. So a lot of these actors, like the A-list movie stars, you'll see will have like a 30-year, 40-year prime. They have to be the top of the top of the top to have it. But Smith came out in the mid 90s, and by 1997, after like it's Fresh Prince, he makes Bad Boys in 95, right? You makes like Independence Day the next year, Men in Black. By like 98, everybody and their mother was like, oh yeah, Will Smith, he's a big star. He opens movies, one of the biggest in the world. But there's still a little bit of like a delay. Like the whole world does not get used to the idea of Will Smith being an A-list movie star as fast as we do.
Yeah.
International releases, sequels, things like that have to happen. It's really not until post Ali, him getting an Oscar nomination for Ali, getting into this part of his career that you realize, okay, he is now a global icon. They say, we want you to make this movie. He says, give me $25 million. And
they say, okay.
They say no. He says, give me $30 million. And they say, okay.
Yeah.
Like, when you're at the point in his career that he was at here, you ask for whatever you want. And it is so clearly peak Will Smith. It's kind of like the example I used was like when you look at Brad Pitt. You look at Brad Pitt in like Legends of the Fall, Seven, Fight Club, the whole 90s. He's like really establishing himself as like a heartthrob, top of the top movie star.
Yeah.
But it's really Troy. It's 2004. Like he's married to Angelina Jolie. He's been at it for a decade. The world knows his name and his face and his likeness, and he's gonna be in Troy as like a god.
Yeah.
That's when he peaks. And it's like when you watch an actor or really an actress at that moment in their career when it's very clear just how iconic and legendary they are, it's kind of a special, unique thing because there aren't that many.
Yeah, and it is interesting how certain of them kind of follow this path and others don't. Like Tom Cruise and Leonardo DiCaprio are a little different than Brad Pitt and Will Smith because Will Smith and Brad Pitt have done 3 times as many movies as the other guys that I mentioned, and like Will Smith, that's what he did in this, this run. He just did everything that he did Hitch, he did Shark Tale, he did iRobot, Bad Boys 2, Bland and Black 2, Ali, like Legend of Bagger Vance. He was in everything and everyone was eating it up. But then I think the issue is with that, and the same thing happened with Pitt, is that you just kind of get tired of it. You get kind of tired of seeing them, even though it's not even that I dislike a lot of the movies that during, I guess, maybe the dark ages for Will Smith, which it honestly feels like he's kind of still in them. Maybe he's coming out because of like Aladdin and stuff. Like, I guess maybe he's Gemini Man was whatever, Spies in Disguise. But for the most part, it's really tough when you oversaturate yourself. And so I think the other part of this conversation that you and I were having was about someone like Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
Who's kind of like kind of doing it. He never got to the same level as Will Smith or Brad Pitt, but he was massive, A-list celebrity for sure. People were talking about him and Anna Faris, and then, we saw what he did with Jurassic World and with Passengers. It looked like he was going to try to do the thing, but people just didn't care the same way.
Second Jurassic World was kind of a bomb. People didn't like it.
Passengers was kind of a bomb.
People didn't care about Passengers. I think what'll be really interesting about Chris Pratt, Magnificent Seven's in there. What'll be interesting about him is he's in that phase, the Troy phase we're talking about now. And if his next 3 years, he does something like, let's just pretend, I think he has a movie called like The Ghost Rider coming out. Mm-hmm. If The Ghost Rider comes out and the next Guardians of the Galaxy comes out and Chris Pratt kind of ascends to a next level, like if he's in something really impressive that's not just playing Star-Lord again.
Right.
And the world takes notice, then you'll kind of realize, okay, this is his peak. But it feels to me like he already peaked. The peak happened. It's really hard. Most actors and actresses don't get the kind
They never even peak like that.
No, when you say Brad Pitt, Will Smith, you're talking about 2 of the 20 most famous ever in the history of movies. In 100 years of movies, you're talking about 2 of the most famous of all time. Probably.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it's just a different conversation. But I definitely think that when you see him do the double gun, I was like, this is sweet.
I'm in. Yeah, and like the cars on the freeway and
Yeah.
like, you know, the insane chases. I mean, like even when it comes to Pantoliano being like, "How did you sink a boat?"
Yeah.
And then Will Smith's like, well, "We didn't sink it." It's
Right.
like that happened in a car chase on the freeway. Like that's the Michael Bay part that you love of it.
And I think the other thing too is like Eric Frederick, who's a member of the Action Advisory Board here, he says in here, I like to be entertained. I don't care how dumb and over the top it is. Yeah, you and most people. I think I think we're in a lot of cases the same way, which is why it's relevant for us to even for our thesis statements point out what we're pointing out, because it's a surprising feeling. It doesn't happen very often for me where I watch something and I'm like, I'm struggling to stay engaged because I find this to be so dumb it's offensive. And like that's what happened for periods of this movie for me.
Well, and for me, I was just watching and I was just like, Michael Bay must just be sitting at home laughing with his millions and millions of dollars. And his ability to go out in public and people are like, oh my God, that's Michael Bay. If he would just make my movie.
Yeah.
Like the fact that people still want Michael Bay to
course.
make their movies and they still talk about him. You know, was it Six Underground was his most recent one?
Yeah, as a
Everyone's talking
Netflix movie. I mean, he's definitely already peaked. He decided to make 10 years of Transformers movies.
I mean, my favorite thing is like earlier in the chat when I gave my thesis, it's like people are like, well, what about this movie? Well, what about this movie? And I'm like, they're all not that good.
You're like, I intimately know the only movies you can reference that he would even like. If you want to try to convince me that 13 Hours, The Island, or like Pearl Harbor are like movies that we should be calling like classics.
Great
classics in their own right, definitely.
Yes,
right. Like
100% classics in their own right. But
there's a Criterion Collection release of Armageddon. Okay, I understand the fact that makes it's a relevant movie. When a movie opens and makes a lot of money, it's a big deal. We love how many Michael Bay movies we covered on this show? Like 6 probably. This is probably like the 6th one.
Probably. I mean, I still want to cover The Island.
Yeah. I convinced you to do Pearl Harbor a few weeks ago.
Yeah, you did. You did convince me.
So anyway, I think that's kind of the point here. So that's going to be our thesis statement, our fist bump moments. We're not going to do production development. We kind of did star profiles a little bit. I think Martin Lawrence, without getting too deep into it, we all kind of know his career was a little short-lived in the 90s and 2000s. He did the Bad Boys movies. He's in Blue Streak.
Which I
Big
love.
fan of Blue Streak.
National Security, Black Knight.
Big Mama's House.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Black Knight.
Black Knight. It's a good movie.
Does he get time traveled in that movie?
Yeah, he does, and he's a Black Knight. So that's the thing.
Is it Richard Gere? No, he's got to be in he's in First Night.
Yeah, that's First Night with Connery. I can't remember who else is in that. I feel like it's like another Luke Wilson, but it's not because that's Blue Streak. This movie got a 23% on the tomato meter, but a 78% by the audience, which is pretty perfect because it shows exactly what we are talking about. Favorite line? Do you have a favorite line in this movie? There's so many.
So there's a bunch. I think and just for a second here, I just need to read the plot synopsis of Black Knight.
Okay, please do. Oh, wait, hold on. Is it Steve Zahn? Who is it?
It is.
Who is it?
Well, Tom Wilkinson is Sir Nolte of Marlborough.
Yes, great. Marlborough. There's no one else?
It's not. There's nobody else listed in that, but it looks like a cast in order of appearance. So on the cover.
All right, you read the synopsis. I'll keep digging. I feel like there's got to be a white dude in here.
Yeah, there is, but there is, but I don't recognize. Yeah, it doesn't look like. But the cover
is on the cover.
The cover's fantastic.
Yeah, the cover is great.
So the synopsis is Martin Lawrence plays Jamal, an employee in medieval world amusement park.
Doesn't even have a last name.
After sustaining a blow to the head, he awakens to find himself in 14th century England. If that's not a pitch in a pitch meeting that works for you, I don't know what is. I mean, literally, that's probably the entirety of the conversation. Who's in it? Martin Lawrence. Done. Make the movie.
God.
Favorite line.
Yeah.
So my favorite line in this movie is it's at the beginning actually, and it's when you first meet Peter Stormare, who's he's one of the two villains. He's the guy who's changing money or whatever. And don't forget about Life with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy. I love that movie. Life.
Oh yeah.
I enjoy that movie. So Peter Stormare is up in his club and he sees this guy overdosing on ecstasy, which is hilarious that ecstasy is like the dangerous drug in this movie.
Yeah, it's great.
It's funny, but he's overdosing on ecstasy in his club, and Peter Stormare's like, "Get this guy out of here! Some punk thinks he can die in my club." And I was like, "Oh, what a sweet line from a villain!"
Guy. It's a good bad guy.
It's like, that is ruthless. He can't even die in your club.
You know what's funny is that like I remember good amount of cuts from this movie, and like that of the dude overdosing, getting thrown outside.
Yeah.
The moment where they bring his partner to him in the barrel he's all chopped up and there's all the blood dripping out of it. There's moments in this where I was just like, as a kid, it really stuck with me.
It's violent as crap.
Yeah,
man.
it really is.
There's a lot of people getting shot. There's blood flying everywhere.
Dead bodies everywhere.
Yeah.
For me, it's actually funny because the whole scene of them, the homoerotic video store porn whatever scene,
It's a great scene.
it's very good, very well written, very well acted. It's so like stupidly cliche
Yeah.
that at the end, when the lady goes, "And you two motherfuckers need Jesus," it was so on the nose, nail on the head cliche that I died laughing. I don't know why I actually laughed out loud for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was got. And the other time that I laughed out loud was when he shot the inside of his Ferrari with the machine gun. I actually loved that
I
moment.
thought it was really funny too. I'm telling you, I was like, actually, that scene when they're talking and they're in the thing, and he's like, we have this box.
Words that we never say.
We never say. I don't want to ever hear the word flaccid again. And you're like, everybody's listening to you outside in the store. They're all hearing you have, and they think you're gay because of the way that the dialogue is written. This is funny. I was like, wow. But the thing is, here was what I thought about. So let's just pretend. Ryan, do we have a few minutes to go over here? It's important.
Yeah,
we have
one or two, yes.
I was like, imagine for a second that you and somebody was like, hey, you guys, we're going to give you $1 million and you need to write a script for a successful children's film. You need to write a movie for kids. So we're going to have you guys write the script for Ugly Dolls 2.
Okay.
Or Angry Birds 3 or something like that. And you and I would literally just be like, well, we can't really play to the height of our intelligence here because it's for children. So things that we think are funny are probably not appropriate. And actually, when we were kids, a lot of the stuff we laughed at were like Chris Farley falling through tables,
Right.
Fart jokes, dick jokes.
Yeah, a lot of physical humor.
A lot of physical humor, probably because you're a kid. Something like two people and the people in the store thinking that they're having a relationship, but actually they're talking about him shooting him in the butt.
Oh, yeah.
That's probably funny.
Oh, as a kid, that scene, I was dying.
And that's the part about it where it's like, I don't know if it's actually that Michael Bay movies are made for like 10-year-olds and that we as adults just see them and think they're out for us, or that actually the whole time they're for people whose brains are not fully developed and that's why they're supposed to be entertaining.
Right. Well, and also like, what does it say about the demo when 12-year-olds get the same thing out of it as the 45-year-olds that you're trying to sell it to?
Exactly.
It's just a really interesting place to be in. So, without further ado, there are 3 action movie categories: totally ridiculous, totally legitimate,
stop you right
ridiculously legitimate. Ben, what is this movie?
Totally ridiculous.
Totally ridiculous.
It's one of the most ridiculous action movies ever made. It had plenty of things I found enjoyable. I'm actually stunned. We have as many people watching. They
stuck around.
They heard us talk about the Oscars. They stuck around to hear us talk about Bad Boys 2. I did not think the demographic of our audience was that is interested in both subjects.
Well, I love it. So while we wrap up the show, guys, let us know in the chat what you thought about us opening with like a news segment, or us talking about something that's very topical in movie news. And if we were to spend a little bit of time on that every show, let us know how you like that format. Obviously, the Oscars, we went much longer than we normally would. We'd probably spend closer to 15 minutes talking about whatever it was, whereas today we spent over half the show discussing the Oscars.
We wanted to talk about the new Morbius trailer that dropped by Sony. We're actually going to do a live trailer reaction. Should be up here in the next few minutes. We're going to do it here with Popcorn Talk, so look out for that. And let us know in the comments, as Drew mentioned. We do have one new general in the action army that I want to give a shout out to, because we are going to shout the generals out at the end of the show. But we have a brand new one.
But first, we have to do
the pitch.
Oh, there you go. Music's in. We don't actually know what we're covering next week yet.
Is that true?
I don't think we do. We still haven't. We're slowly starting the new year. The problem is that we wanted to do something older in relation. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go see Bad Boys for Life tomorrow night, and I will let you know what I think about it.
Yep.
I'll be shocked if we cover Bad Boys for Life on next week's episode, but I'll also be pleasantly surprised. So if I go and watch it tomorrow night and I love it, then we'll be doing that next week on the show. If not, I don't know. I feel like there's nothing crazy coming out that I'm super excited about, and there's nothing that I've been dying to cover. I would do Parasite on the show, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, there's like movies that are coming out for sure. I mean, we've got I'm seeing Doolittle tonight. You're going to be seeing Bad Boys tomorrow. There's other movies coming out that we could talk about covering, but I think stay tuned, guys. As I mentioned one more time, just to plug it, just so you guys know, go check out Action Industries on YouTube. It's our channel. We have a new show launching this Sunday night, 5:30 p.m. The Action Guys. It's a 2-hour live streaming show. We're going to have Collins, a special guest. We're going to be talking about our top films of 2019. All the fun things there, so we're really, really hyped on that, and the best way to do that is go hit that like, subscribe button. Chaz Hill, big salute to Chaz Hill, brand new general in the Action Army. If you're at the general level on our Patreon, that new show is dedicated to you. We're going to be announcing all of the generals every show, so that is the way we're doing that show.
Oh, we got Eric Ritz also. Eric Ritz. I think it's just Chaz Hill. You did just say Chaz Hill.
Did I?
Yeah, who the hell's Chaz Hill?
I don't know, but it's definitely Eric Ritz.
I was like, who's Chaz Hill? I was like, we got another general.
No, Chaz Hill maybe he was previously I am so sorry, Eric Ritz. Eric Ritz, big shout to you as a general.
I love it. Big shout out, guys. We will see you same time, same place next week.
Bye, everybody.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
Expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of its owners or principals.